Good morning and welcome back to News and Views. Matric results hold a special place in the hearts of many South Africans. And I remember the excitement and nerves of waiting for my own results. Checking the newspaper early in the morning to see my exam number, hurtling around it with your classmates, and feeling that sense of achievement when you ultimately find it. It's almost a rite of passage that so many of us have experienced. And for decades, it's been a tradition deeply woven into the fabric of our country. But this year, that tradition has been at the center of a legal storm. The Gauteng High Court has dismissed an urgent bid for the information regulator to stop the publication of matric results in newspapers and online platforms, and they're citing privacy concerns and compliance with the POPI Act. Eh? Imagine. January, newspapers, no matric results. That would be weird. But to help us unpack this debate and to reflect on what it means for learners, we are joined by education activist Hendrick Makaneta. Hendrick, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you with us this morning. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Selalo. Thank you for having me.
I think first and foremost, I want to get context and reaction from you. What was your reaction to yesterday's High Court's decision to strike the information regulator's application of the role? What did you make of it?
Well, I think that, the first and foremost, it is very clear that the role of the court yesterday was to look at the matter of agency, to check whether the matter that was brought before the court by the information regulator, whether that matter was agent. Because, of course, the IR or the information regulator, put that matter on an agent basis. Now, it is very clear at this point that the court saw that the information regulator was not able to provide, valid, reasons as to why the matter is agent, because there are certain requirements in law that must be met before the court can declare a matter agent. And so there is no doubt that the court saw that if the department, or should the Department of Basic Education go ahead and publish those results in newspapers, the information regulator will not suffer irreparable harm. So there are certain conditions which must be met before the court can agree with you that the matter is agent. And one of them is whether you'll suffer irreparable harm or not. So in this case, the court was correct, in my view, to declare that the matter was not agent.
The court also noted that there was no evidence of complaints from learners. Do you believe the publication of matric results, as we've always used to them, in these anonymized formats now, infringes on learners' privacy in any way?
Well, if you look at the POPIA, or the Protection of Personal Information Act, it defines personal information to be your name and surname, along with your ID number. And of course, it also goes further to include any other number, such as student numbers or your exam number, for example, is classified. It's also classified as personal information, which therefore means that according to this act, if anybody has to publish, your information, then they will require your consent. If the learner is below 18, the consent will be required. So yes, in a sense, although the learners have not been approached in this matter, I think that the information regulator was relying on that piece of legislation, which is POPIA. And that is why, the matter will be heard on a normal court roll at a future date, wherein the merits of the case will be discussed. And I think that, it is clear at this point that the DBE only won on a technicality, or let me say that they won the battle, but they did not win the war. The war is still on because the information regulator says that that enforcement notice that has been issued against the DBE still stands. And of course, you'll recall that also the 5 million rands was the DBE was fined by the information regulator, which means that in accordance with this legislation, the DBE still has to pay that 5 million rands unless they win on their appeal, because I know that they've appealed against that ruling on the enforcement order.
You speak of a war, and this war is, one that's going to be going on for a long time. And the department has argued that the publishing of matric results in newspapers has been a long-standing tradition. How important is this tradition, in celebrating learners' achievements? We're going to be witnessing the same thing in about next week on the 14th. How important is it, this tradition in celebrating learners' achievements versus the potential privacy concerns? Is there one that outweighs the other?
Well, Silaelo, that is for the court to decide. In fact, when the matter is put on a normal court roll, once the attorneys and the advocates of each party deliberate in court before the judge, ultimately this is going to be an interest case, and the judge will be able to rule on whether privacy supersedes public interest, or whether it's the other way around. But you are correct. I fully agree with you. The tradition that has been held from time immemorial, even before the democratic government could come into place, has always been that there's always celebrations during this time when matric learners and their parents buy newspapers and check whether their children were able to do well. In my time as Silaelo, it used to be the name and the surname. And so everyone, even your uncle in Johannesburg, could just buy a paper and just check your name. And when your name was there, everybody would be very happy. And I can tell that at a later stage, your generation, as you have correctly indicated when you began this interview, your generation used exam numbers instead of names. And to a large extent, I salute your generation, because this is the generation that was able to protect the integrity of other learners, because no names could be found. And usually no one might know what your exam number is. And I think that it protected a lot of learners from issues of suicidal thought and anxiety, and it's something that should continue to be celebrated, in my view. If it was according to me, I would say let the tradition carry on, because it gives everybody a chance to properly celebrate the achievements of their learners. And you have correctly stated that that rite of passage, that is the correct terminology that you have used. It is good that everybody, after 12 years of study, you must be able to be celebrated even publicly. But as I said, the court will have to deal with that matter when the matter is brought in the normal court room.
And just in closing, next week there's going to be that release of the 2023 matric results, and it's going to be a contentious issue, because it always is. The numbers, those that have passed, those that have made it through matric, those that have been lost within the system. Just in general, is the South African schooling system and how we go about, first grade right until matric, still quite relevant, still quite a system that works. What can we make of it?
Well, I think that the CAPS document that we have, which guides the implementation of curriculum generally, it works, although there's a lot of work. I do believe, however, that the state of inequality in the country should be addressed. Because if you look at provinces such as the Western Cape and Gauteng, these are provinces which have got a lot of resources in their schools. If you visit these schools in Gauteng and Western Cape, compared with rural provinces such as the Eastern Cape and Limpopo, you'll be able to see that there's a vast difference in terms of the allocation of resources which assist our learners to prepare themselves for the future. And I honestly think that is the reason why from time to time we find that the two provinces, Gauteng and Western Cape, continue to be at the top of the ladder when we look at their performance. And other provinces, such as Eastern Cape and Limpopo, although they are working very hard as well, they are able to produce good results. If you look at the district of Vembe, for example, in Limpopo, when it comes to maths and science, they are very brilliant and they are able to produce a lot of distinctions. But generally, the province as a whole, because of the challenges of poverty as well as inequality and skewed allocation of resources, it's a problem. Because remember, even though we fall under the National Department of Basic Education, but it is the provinces themselves are the ones which implement and even their treasuries. So Gauteng and Western Cape do not have a lot of challenges when it comes to resources. They are well resourced, and that is why they continue to take a lead.
And the debate around the 30% pass mark is raising again. One individual which seems to be at the forefront of this is Musi Maimani. He's also come out and said, you should only get a matric certificate if you pass 6 subjects with 50% or more. Is there space for reform in that aspect? Could we, I don't know, increase the pass mark? Is it okay where it is? What do you make of such sentiments?
Well, the call by Honorable Musma Iman is genuine, and I think that in the long run it should be implemented. But currently, with this high level of inequality in the country, it is not feasible to expect that every learner must just obtain 50%, given the broader challenges that we face, such as overcrowding in some of the schools, particularly in rural areas, as well as townships. We still have a lot of learners who are not able to sometimes go into the school due to floods. If you look at Eastern Cape, for example, the issues of scholar transport, because there are still learners who have to cross a river just to get into the school. So I believe that until such time that we can, equalize the the schooling system to ensure that everybody has got the same access, to the same kind of resources, they can compete equally. But right now, it would be unfair to expect that everyone must obtain 50% in their studies due to this number of factors that I've raised. And sometimes, learning and teaching is compromised in township schools. I mean, whenever there are strikes, whenever SATU goes on a strike, it is the schools in the townships and rural areas that suffer the most. Because even those teachers who want to go into the school to go and teach, they are prohibited in such areas, unlike those schools which are found in your affluent suburbs, but as well as those independent schools, which have got no unions, where learners are able to learn on a daily basis without any interruption. So until we reach that equality, then I know that it may not be 100% equality, but we really need to try by all means to develop our township schools and bring them to a level where learners can be able to properly create a future for themselves.
And it's in 2025 where we'll be seeing Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Kwarube, have a full academic year under her belt. From what we've witnessed since her tenure began last year, what are some of your expectations from her, and what do you make of her thus far?
Well, what is interesting about the new basic education minister, Ms. Siviwe Gwahube, is the fact that when she took over, she mentioned that, in everything that she does, she will put the learner at the center of every development, and every work she'll just be informed by whether everything that she does is in the best interest of the learner or not. So it's encouraging to have a minister who puts, the learners first. And I think, however, what I've observed, the trend is, if you look at what has been happening recently, synergy is lacking between national ministry as well as some of the provinces. You'll recall that when the minister met with, Solidarity at the NETLEC to discuss the issue of those clauses 4 and 5 of the Bela Act, the Gauteng MEC for Education, Matume Chilwan, issued a statement wherein he lambasted what the minister did. And I think that that kind of synergy is lacking. And recently, after the president signed the Bela into law, or after the president agreed with those 4 and 5 clauses, again, there were two confusing messages that were coming from the minister and the MEC in Gauteng. The minister spoke about the norms and standards which will be developed along with the regulations to a point where implementation of some of these clauses can take place in June 2025. But if you look at Gauteng province, the MEC there said they, as Gauteng, they will implement the act in its entirety immediately, meaning that they are not ready to wait for the norms and standards that will be developed by the minister. And for us, that kind of altercation between the province and the national minister is a cause for great concern. I think that the minister, for her to do a proper work, she's going to need the support of all the, the MECs, all the provinces. I think that political differences should be put aside when it comes to the future of our learners. We know that the MEC in Gauteng comes from the ANC, and the minister comes from the DA. But those caps should be put aside or set aside so that the two can focus on ensuring that they create a conducive environment for learning and teaching so that our learners can be able to create a better future for themselves.
Yeah, I think we're going to leave it there, Mr. Hendrick Makaneta. Really, really valuable points, and really, really appreciate your insights. And I'm sure we'll be talking in the not so distant future. And I think particularly when we'll be unpacking those results once they've been released by the Department of Basic Education and Umalusi.
Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure's all ours, Mr. Hendrick Makaneta, education activist, giving us a host of insights on very varying topics and subjects that have to do with education. We're beginning the academic year. Matric results are going to be released next year. So, next week. So there's a lot that's going on. And we're going to see Minister Siviwe on her first full academic year. And it's going to be interesting how she performs. We've had Minister Enjo Motshekga for quite some time now. And it will be interesting to see a new person at the helm and how they're going to be handling some of the key challenges that are facing our educational sector. So really appreciate Mr. Hendrick Makaneta's insights, and I'm sure we'll be chatting to him in the not so distant future. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues after this.